Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. Today, we're getting into Minecraft. My guess is that you are familiar with Minecraft, but if you are not, make sure that you at least have something to write with. Well, that's if you're familiar or not, because Minecraft is a big deal for a lot of kids these days. And I have a very special guest with me that is going to help us wrap our mind around Minecraft, help us understand how to use Minecraft therapeutically. Yes, how to actually bring Minecraft into the therapeutic space. You don't have to keep it outside the playroom, so to speak. So yeah, let's talk about Minecraft, and let me introduce you to my very special guest, Brian Keating, and let me tell you a little bit about Brian. So Brian is a certified synergetic play therapist and a certified group psychotherapist. He provides individual counseling and also group support, works with children, adolescents, and adults. He does a lot of tele-play therapy. So Brian, thank you for specializing in that. I think that's still
Mm.
such a mystery to a lot of individuals. And as such, you are a contributing author to a book called Advances in Online Therapy, Emergence of a New Paradigm. Listeners will let you know more about that book later on, but if you do teletherapy, you're going to want to check that one out. You work with grief, you work with childhood bereavement, therapeutic use of video games, which we're going to get into, specifically Minecraft. And a fun fact that I did not know about you that I've just learned is that you were also a musician, or maybe still are a musician, for over 12 years, and that this has contributed beautifully to your ability to deeply listen and attune. So, Brian,
Mm.
thank you for being here, and thank you for having a conversation with us to demystify Minecraft in the therapeutic space.
Yes, Lisa, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Such a big fan of the podcast, and I'm so excited to talk about Minecraft and how I've been using it and how other clinicians might find ways to use it.
Amazing. So, let's just go ahead and answer the question in case right from the beginning here someone's going, I don't even know what Minecraft is.
Mhm.
So, what is Minecraft?
Yes, great question. And I know that I might be speaking to people who have played Minecraft, play it themselves, or have no idea what it is, or maybe have family members or kids themselves that know that it's going on, but they don't really know what it means or what it is. So, Minecraft is a video game that can be single player or multiplayer. And essentially, it's a mix between sand play, playing with Legos, while also being a survival and strategic game. So almost like a board game, but in the video game realm.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask you, we're going to come back to the whole sand tray reference and unpack what you just said
Yes.
because that just caught my attention. Um,
Mm.
so before we get into how to use it, Brian, what's your connection with Minecraft? Why are we
Yes, and
talking about this?
yeah, and I'll give a bit of a backstory here that I think will lead us to then why I get so excited about using this therapeutically and why I feel it's so important. Um, I don't necessarily identify as a gamer myself. I've played video games when I was younger. I occasionally play video games now, but it's not something that's a big part of my life. And I actually never even played Minecraft before I decided I wanted to use it in therapy. When the pandemic happened, I was, of course, working in person, having a play therapy office in Boulder, Colorado. And when the move to online work started, I never imagined that I would stay working online and never even thought it would go past a weekend or a week. But then, of course, as that went on longer and longer, I realized that I was needing to use more um, play therapy interventions over the screen with gameplay, screen sharing, things like that. And of course, the game Minecraft kept coming up. Kids mentioned, oh, I wish I could play Minecraft. I'd love to play Minecraft. And I started to think, okay, well, this is, important to them, how can this become part of the session? And I started to think about my own history with video games. And I'm going to be aging and dating myself a little bit here. But as a kid, I would play Atari or the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yes,
And
yes, yes,
yes, yeah,
yes,
all the old school games.
yes. Pitfall.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So already even talking about that and like thinking of Pitfall and like swinging on the vine, like I'm noticing like I'm getting excited about it.
Totally.
Yeah, like our bodies are moving, my heart's beating faster, like, oh, it's so much fun. And I thought about when I was playing those games, how I'd have the controller and I'd be moving my arms and kind of dodging with it, and maybe even knocked over like a can of Mountain Dew or something one time, not knowing like what was around me. And so there was so much activation, I remember, in my body,
Mm,
but never any internal awareness
mm,
of what was actually going on when I was playing.
mm,
And it would have seemed so strange to me at the time if a friend or a family member was like, oh, wow, you're really moving your arms. Or, oh my gosh, when we swung over that alligator, that crocodile, my stomach just dropped.
mm,
And so then that started to reshape how I would think about,
mm,
well, what are video games in therapy?
mm,
And the big shift for Minecraft was when I stopped asking, um, how do I do Minecraft in therapy? And then start asking, how do I be with Minecraft in therapy?
So good.
How can I be in this game?
Mhm.
And when that became the question, then it was like, oh, okay, let's buy the game. Let's figure this out. And I can talk more about this later, but I'm horrible at it. And that doesn't matter. And it's still all good.
Awesome. Well, I know we're going to get into more of the details, but I just heard two things that I think are really hopeful for our listeners that maybe are thinking about Minecraft now for the very first time. Number one, I heard you say that you had never played it before you made a decision to use it. And number two,
Yep.
you don't have to be good at it. So
Yep.
those are two very hopeful things if we're hearing this and are now going to decide or maybe consider, maybe do I want to bring Minecraft in also into my play space? So let's just
Yes.
dive into that. Let's dive into the world. So what do you want us to know?
Yeah. So I'll be talking about this from the experience of playing it online.
Mhm.
And so when I'm playing Minecraft with kiddos, we're both logged into the game together, but I can see them through the computer screen. But all the therapeutical and clinical aspects are just as relevant if you're playing together in a playroom, whether it's on a shared screen or different devices. And where I think this kind of branches off in our discussion too is that there's um, a lot to know about like the technical side of the game of like, well, what are the different types of software, what are the different consoles and modalities, and I think that's a different conversation, so I'm not going to go into that as much. uh, but the idea of essentially I'm playing in the game with the child, and uh what's so great about it is the therapeutic work starts the moment the session starts.
Yeah.
So because we're playing together in the game and because we're online, there can oftentimes be a lot of difficulty. Like, oh, one of us can't log in. Or if I didn't do my system upgrade, I'm not getting in and the kid is ready to go. Oftentimes the parent or the adult or the caregiver will be there trying to help. And so at first I really wrestled with that. I was like, oh no, I had all this kind of internal struggle of like, this isn't working. And then I remembered, how do I be with it in the game? And it's like, oh, this is the work right from the start. So even if there's all this activation about how frustrating it is that we can't play and how disappointing it is, and oh, we were so looking forward to this right now, it's just breathing through that and being with like, how do we even get started?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once that gets started, the first thing in the game, whether we're starting for the very first time or if it's a seasoned player, is you get to develop your character. And so there's so much flexibility. And for kiddos that are really exploring their identity, whether it's gender expression or just how they look in the world or how they want to look, whatever it is, they can explore those pieces just by designing their character. So even starting there is a great entry point into the game. So then the next step, which is where things get really exciting, is you can essentially choose how you want to play the game. So there's two types of gameplay. There's creative, which is exciting because even in that, it's starting to speak to the idea of play, of creating, discovering, inventing, and exploring. Like there's all that freedom. And that's where it's very much like Legos, but it's different than Legos where you're not just buying like one set with limited pieces. When you're playing Minecraft in creative mode, like sure, there's always add-ons you can buy and extra things, but essentially you have all the Legos in the world. Unlimited ability to create and express. The other choice is then playing in survival. And already like even saying that word is activating. Like survival, oh my gosh, that can be scary. There can be a lot of unknowns. There can be comparisons, maybe even the shoulds of like, I want to be better, or, why, can I survive, or why am I losing in this? And that can be competitive. But so already making those choices then deepen into the experience of the game.
Yep. So, Brian, I'm very familiar with Minecraft, but some of
Oh,
our listeners may not be. Can you give them what's the point? Like, what's the goal when you're playing the game and you're building? Like, what are you building? Why are you building? Why would you be in survival mode? Maybe even what it kind of looks like if you're able to bring that to life just a little bit, just so that listeners can have that context a little bit as kind of, I can tell where this is going and it's about to get really juicy. So
yes, yes.
I want to bring everyone into what does this look like? What does this feel like when you're in the game?
Yes, love that question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
So the point of the game in creative is to essentially you get to build and do whatever you want. So it's when you spawn, and so like the word spawn is just kind of like when the game starts, when you drop into the game. You're in an environment that is like, the planet Earth. There could be a lot of green grass. There could be a lot of sandy areas, snowy mountaintops. There could be oceans or lakes or underground caves. And so you're in this Earth-like environment. And then the idea is that you can go anywhere. So as a video game, it's called like an open world sandbox where you can go anywhere and essentially you can do anything. So the point of creative is to really just create, discover, invent, explore, do whatever you want. And in the game, you can access it's called an inventory, but it's almost like a play chest of all of these items that you can use. So you can use stone to build things, or you can use sand. There's even TNT. You can, yeah, you can mine. So digging, and if you want to dig underground. And so in creative, it really is just endless. And I'll do a lot of directive interventions in creative, but also non-directive too. But that's kind of how I use creative, as anything goes. In survival, it's similar in that it's an Earth-like environment. But then the point or the goal is to survive the night, to get through the night. And when you spawn in that first world, you don't have any items. You don't have the play therapy tool chest or box. You have to start building, creating your own items. And then what happens is it works through a daytime cycle. So you start out during the day, and all of a sudden the sun starts going down. And that can start to feel intense because then it becomes nighttime.
Okay.
And in Minecraft, in survival mode, at nighttime, there are a lot of scary things.
Yeah.
There are a lot of zombies that are out to get you, creatures that are out to get you. And essentially, your job is to survive.
Yeah. So if we were to bridge this over to the sand tray, essentially you're going into the sand tray, but you're building your own miniatures. So you're making
Yes.
you're exploring, you're walking around your sand tray, but you get to decide what's in your tray with you. You're essentially building your own miniatures, creating the world that you'd love to be in the sand tray, in the creative. But then
Yes.
in the survival, all of a sudden,
Yep.
scary things that you didn't necessarily build, right? So the
Yep.
unpredictable component. So unknown factors then start popping into your sand tray, and the job then is to survive until daytime. Is that
Yes.
an accurate way of saying
Oh,
that?
it's so good. It's perfect.
Okay.
And yes, and in creative, it's like you have an unlimited shelf of miniatures,
Yep.
just unlimited. And then in survival, the play therapist isn't the one that's initiating any of the scary stuff. It's almost like this third party automated thing is just popping things up in the sand.
Yes.
And maybe the kiddo knows, like, oh, I know there's going to be things coming. And depending on what they're working with, the nervous system of the kiddo, then there's
Then there's some
activation
activation.
responses.
Exactly. Okay, so good, so good, so good. Well, already you're already starting to drop clues into how a child playing it with you is different than how if they're just playing at home. Because what it sounds
Yes.
like is you're still going to have activation, you're still going to have the creativity, but in the therapy world or in the therapeutic relationship, there's more focus. And so
Yes.
can you go there now? Really tease out
Yes.
the difference and where how do we start to make this therapeutic?
Yes. And that's where I think it's so important for clinicians that are wanting to do this, is to help start to understand, well, what is different than if I'm just playing with a friend or family member, or if the kiddo is just playing with a
Yeah.
sibling or family member. And parents often want to know that too, because it's like, oh, well, you're just playing video games. Uh, they play Minecraft all the time at home, and
Right.
that's not helping them get better.
Right.
So the idea is, uh, my approach to it is that I'm removing myself and like what I want from the game.
Mhm.
I'm going there to join the kiddo and essentially to focus on what's happening with the activation in the game, tracking the window of tolerance for the child, and really seeing, bringing in that regulation piece as an external regulator and co-regulator, and how to really bring awareness to how is the game having an impact on their brain and body.
Yeah.
And so that's my intention of being the witness, and like thinking of the sand tray, typically the idea is that the therapist wouldn't just insert their hands in the sand, or start playing with their own figurines. So I'm really just in the game, observing what's happening
Mhm.
until I'm brought in a certain way, and tracking my experience along with the kiddo's experience,
Mhm.
which would be very different than if I was just playing with a friend, perhaps, or a family member, or vice versa.
Going back to the story that you shared, how weird it would have been when you were little if a friend had said, "Wow, Brian, you're moving your arms a lot." Or, "Wow, we just jumped over
Yes.
whatever and my stomach dropped." How odd that might be in that context, but actually how appropriate that would be in the
Yes.
therapeutic relationship if you're alongside. You might say some of those things, or you might, is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
yeah.
So especially in survival,
Hmm.
already we're thinking of making the unknown known.
Yes.
We know that the night is coming. Things are getting scary.
Mhm.
Do we start building something that needs to protect us? And
Mhm.
if we haven't, if my authentic response there is like, oh, wow, I'm getting really nervous. I don't have, anything to keep me safe. And I'm really worried about the sun going down and things are going to start to get dark.
Mhm.
Whew,
Mhm.
like that is intense versus if I'm just like, oh, I don't have any safety yet. I'm going to start doing this on my own, which might be different than if I was playing for myself.
Yeah, totally. Totally, totally, totally. Um, Brian, I'm curious if you have a part of a story or part of a session or situation that you want to share. If you do, cool. I'd love to hear it. If you don't, I have one that I could share in this context at some point, or we both could share a little
Yeah.
Minecraft story. Do you have a story that comes to mind to share?
Yeah, I have a bunch of different things that are coming to mind.
Yeah,
Even just the how powerful and what a great tool this is.
yeah.
Uh, in a clinical and therapeutic way. So even thinking about the developmental tasks
Mm-hmm.
that we might be tracking in synergetic play therapy, and thinking about emotional age and developmental age versus chronological age. So I know in a previous podcast of yours talking about using games in play therapy and maybe like the game Candyland and how we might be tracking like emotional versus chronological age. If an older kiddo comes in that might be like 9 or 11
Yeah.
and then they want to play that game, it's like, oh, they might be at a different emotional age. So what I noticed with Minecraft when we start, sometimes kids want to play hide and go seek,
Mm,
which in this one instance I'm thinking of, it was very much of a do I exist?
mm, mhm,
And the difference for me of, so in the game, there's a skill you can have of teleportation.
mhm,
So again, Minecraft is a huge world. We could be so far away from each other. I could just be like, oh, I'm going to teleport to you.
mhm.
And so maybe if I was playing and I wasn't, really tuned into myself and maybe the task that was happening, I might just say, oh, I'm going to teleport to you. And that could feel really aggressive and it just might not be what they were wanting. But the idea of come find me.
Mm, mm,
Wow. So there's so much happening there.
mm,
And then in that instance, we moved from that to more independent play, and then to parallel play, and then to collaborative play in the game.
mhm.
So at first, independently, they were just kind of building by themselves. And I was offering a lot of observational statements, maybe just how they were stacking blocks, what blocks they were using. And then it was parallel play. Well, you can build over there too. So
Mhm.
then I was bringing in more of the relational statements of like, oh, you're over there and I'm over here. And you, you, whatever is happening with that in the game, and then the collaborative play of how we might be playing together, and then moving towards like, oh, we might be ready to play survival, and then even talking about that and game planning for that. So that's
Yeah.
just kind of an example that comes to mind.
So good. I mean, I love this other angle of what I love that you're pointing us to, Brian, is I think sometimes play therapists just get so caught in, oh, it's a game. It's like, it's play. And so
Yeah.
join them in it because the things that a child would bring to life with puppets are the same things they're going to bring to life in the middle of the game.
Yes.
Like you're
Yes.
saying, the regressive states or the regressive sort of themes are still going to be there. The uh, you know uh, the larger themes of what's happening with their nervous system are still going to be there. And I just love this because I feel like there's this sort of line sometimes that play therapists draw in the sand, no pun intended, and they're like, nope,
Mm,
if it's not play, then we can't do it. If it's technology, that's not play, and so we can't do it. And I'm like, no, bring it, bring it in. And so I love your speaking to
yes.
this. Um, may I share the story that came to mind for me, just to piggyback?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
So this was an 11-year-old boy that I worked with, and it was interesting because part of the reason why his parents had brought him to me was their concern of his addiction to video games
Mm,
and their perception of his level of dysregulation that would happen after, when he would play and all of this, and he was struggling socially and at school and all these things. And so it was really interesting because when I first went out to the waiting room to meet him, of course he's on his iPad, and his mom's saying, put it down, put it down, put it down. And I said, no, bring
yeah.
it in,
Yes.
bring it in. And he chose Minecraft.
Mm,
And it was so beautiful. So he chose the survival a mode for Minecraft, and it was an entire session of learning together how to be aware of your body, how to work with those states of activation, how to work with the anxiety. Those zombies would come out of nowhere and just scare you out of
yes.
nowhere. And then it was like learning how to down regulate from that level of hyper arousal, and what do we do, and all those themes corresponded beautifully with the trauma that he was
Yes.
trying to integrate. And so our whole entire
Mm,
journey together was through Minecraft and him bringing to life his fears, his anxieties, his I don't know if I'm safe, I don't know if I'm okay, I don't know if I'm in. And we did it in a way that was deeply meaningful for him. And it
mm,
was such a beautiful then conversation with his parents to say, can we reframe this from addiction to it's actually meaningful for him and he's trying to work something out. And there's
yes.
a really intuitive part of him that keeps going back to the scary components because of his
Yes.
own inner wisdom. He's trying to integrate. So to you, it might seem repetitive. To you, it might seem crazy. To you, it might be like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
But for him, it was perfection in his process. And that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's such a great example. And what a gift for that kiddo to
Yeah.
be able to do that in their play
Right.
therapy session.
Right. So,
Because yeah,
oh,
as things from the outside
yes.
world seep into the playroom,
Yes.
of course we know that the opposite is true, that what they're learning in the playroom then seeps outside. And so then all that experience that he's having in the game and the playroom or online is then able to be integrated and practiced and used when he's at home
Totally.
playing the game.
So, Brian, I'm super curious because both of our examples, we're talking more about a non-directive kind of approach in both of these
Yeah.
examples. Will you share with us a little bit about how you weave in some of the directive components, or where you use directive in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. That feels like an important part of my work, especially working with grief and trauma and childhood bereavement. And I'm thinking about the podcast episode you had about non-directive and directive play therapies, where both can be happening at the same time in many ways, and that's how I approach it in Minecraft, where my my training with trauma is in EMDR, and then I'm also trained in childhood bereavement and working through that through the Judy's House organization in Denver, Colorado. But so the idea is I'll bring in these directive pieces, working through any sort of trauma incident, or if there's bereavement or going through a grief process, we're wanting to create safety with like a worry box and then a happy place.
Mm-hmm.
So those are typically the two places where I'll usually start, where I'll have a directive intervention of prompting, can we build a worry box that's somewhere away from all the good stuff in the island or in this world, a place that only exists, and it can be so secure and so strong, and they can build it. And then sometimes I'll even prompt that they can spawn their worries. So again, spawning meaning in creative, you can essentially even bring the bad guys into the game. So sometimes what I'll do is if there's a worry box, there can be directive interventions or prompts to like identify what the worry is, make it external, and they can even name it and put it in their box.
Mhm.
And then it can't get out and it's just there and it's locked shut. And then we might revisit it, or the next session might put more worries in.
Mhm.
And then also with the happy place, just finding another place in the world that feels really special and important to them. And then the third directive intervention with something like grief and bereavement might be to build a memorial or some type of remembrance for their special person, or if it was a pet or whatever it is. And it could be, planting a garden with all these flowers. But then what's so great about Minecraft is you can do anything. So one example I share is it might be, there's a garden and there's all these flowers. And then it's like, oh, you know what? My special person loved the Barbie movie. There is not enough pink in this memorial garden. Well, in Minecraft, there's pink rugs. So all of a sudden you can put pink carpet down all over the grass. And now it's like this memorial adding to it for their special person.
Yeah. So I just
Uh,
heard you say that actually we get to weave in art therapy.
yes. Oh,
Right?
yes. Yes. Yes.
Right? So we can actually bring in components of art therapy also
Yes.
into the process, and containment, and yeah, safe places or happy places. We get to weave those pieces in as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So much potential.
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and then a huge part of the work that's come up most recently for me is in the Boulder, Colorado community. About, well, I guess it was almost 2.5 years ago now, there was a large scale fire that, tragically impacted so many residents here. And there were so many people that lost their house to the fire. And so what was coming up as a directive intervention was how to kind of work through that. How do they memorialize it? How could kiddos find a way to have their worry box or safe place? And what was happening was that kids started to rebuild their house in the game.
Mm.
And so now all of a sudden we had these huge houses that were so healing to go through each room and, oh, I remember this
Mm.
holiday that we had here, or I remember this part of our yard.
Mm. Yeah.
And then being able to bring families in, the adults too, to see that in the game.
Beautiful. As you're talking, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I just had a flash of, you could even do a directive with kids that are getting a divorce, and like almost two worlds where they build
Yes.
one world with one parent and one world with another parent, and what it's like
Yes.
to have to go back and forth right between two worlds and what exists in one. And that just popped into mind as I was picturing what you were saying around building homes and creating worlds. And yeah,
Yes.
that would be interesting intervention.
Yes. I've never done that. And that's totally something that, yeah,
Yeah,
keep
really.
in
Okay.
mind to do. Yeah.
Listener, if you try it, email us.
Yes.
let us
Yes.
let
Yes.
us
I'd love
know
to
how
hear
it
about
goes.
it.
Let us know how it goes. Oh my gosh, so good, so good. Okay, any other pieces around this before I switch over to maybe a little bit more about the therapist journey?
Um, this could be a segue, even to that, thinking about the video game addiction that you mentioned with your client that came in with the tablet. I think another benefit that I've seen and that I share with parents and caregivers that are interested in this is, so not only are we playing the game in session, but not only is there a therapeutic start, if we get off to a disruption, but it's also practicing an intentional ending
Mm,
to this game and to this experience. And so often that's what comes up with families is they're like, oh, well, I don't mind that they play, but they just they can't get off, or they there's these big meltdowns when it's time to then go to dinner. So part of it in the session is the practice of, we have 10 minutes left. This is going to be so hard to stop. Oh my gosh, there's only 3 minutes left and it's just starting to get to be nighttime and we just built this base and like, I want to keep going. And I know that we can't.
Oh, yeah. So good. Yeah, helping them with that transition component that is so challenging.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I could even imagine that that could even be a treatment goal, and that that's one of the focuses even in using this therapeutically. If there's a treatment goal around transitions or not being able to end things well,
Yes.
or not being able
Yep.
to shift from one activity to another activity very well, that's also, oh my gosh, Brian, my wheels are like spinning like so fast in
Mm.
my brain. It's so exciting.
I love that you're excited about this.
I'm so excited. I'm so unbelievably exciting about this. Okay, so we've talked so far about facilitating this one-on-one. My first question with that, before where I'm going, is what would it be like to do it in a group? That's where I'm going.
Mm.
What are some of the challenges or some of the considerations that the therapist might need to think about first when they're doing it one-on-one? And then let's then talk about what are the considerations if we're thinking about doing this in a group format.
Yes. So there's always the technology piece of needing to know, like, okay, well, how do you play this for yourself? There's different versions, and and you can certainly find all that information online, but it isn't very easy to just get it started without doing the legwork with that. And I often say that people should get like a certificate from Microsoft for, the technological achievement and advancement in navigating like how to sync up and link up. So that's a challenge. There's always the challenge, especially with the synergetic play therapy approach, of how we bring ourselves or how we are in session and working with the offering and kind of being aware of like, okay, what's mine? What am I coming in with today? And what is being offered to me by the child and through the play and through the themes that are coming up. Um,
So
and
the
so
challenge
with that,
being like mindfully navigating that there's a experience that we're feeling stuff.
yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
then also, and I know you mentioned this in your podcast episode on the gameplay and using games, is that naturally we can get drawn into like, oh, I want to do really well, or I want to, uh, beat them in this game. There's kind of that drive, and that is absolutely hard in Minecraft, because there can be collaborative elements that then get competitive, and the kiddo can also initiate competitive play. They can say, hey, let's do battle together, or let's have a building challenge. I remember one time I was challenged to build a castle, and so we each had, the kiddo was like, okay, we have 10 minutes to build the best castle. And so then there's that part of me.
Pressure.
Yes, yes, so much pressure. And then, is there that part of me that's like, oh, I'm going to crush this. I'm going to build, the best castle. And so then again, being the clinical intention of it too, of like, oh, how do I be with, yeah, this experience of this is pressure. This is yeah, working to a goal and like this achievement. And something that's been helpful for me with that is in my training for the synergetic play therapy certification, I was working with the consultant Polly Douglas, and we were talking about competitive play, and she offered me something that I use all the time. I absolutely love it, is to ask the kiddo how hard they want you to play. So like, do you want me to play easy, medium, or hard? And so then I added, this extra playfulness where I'll say, okay, if we're competing or if there's a challenge, how I come back to not getting pulled into that pressure and like, and wanting to do really well, I'll ask, okay, do you want me to play easy, medium, hard, or insanity triple plus? And so, it lets them know, and I'll kind of talk through it. Insanity triple plus, I'm playing as an adult, my hardest. And at first they might say insanity triple plus. And then I say, okay, and I start building or something, or, we're attacking, and then they might say medium, medium, medium. And so for me, then I'm going into, okay, window of tolerance.
Yeah.
They're having control over how much, intensity they want from me right now. And, they're able to turn inwards and track that. And then I'm tracking that throughout the game,
Awesome.
or throughout the sessions, throughout the treatment plan.
So let's flip over now. Give us a little bit on group. How do you use this in a group?
Yeah, I love doing the groups. I just love group work in general. And I love doing the Minecraft groups because it's a higher intensity of all the things, that we've already talked about. Because I'm working all online for the online groups, everyone logs in so they can see one another in the group, but then we're also together in the world. And I noticed that so many of the same themes, and again, these are SPT themes, but the idea of the test, they're testing, will I be authentic in myself with them? But then they're also kind of testing one another too. Like, can they be, themselves with each other? And to help, go into a sense of safety in that first group. And again, like kind of making the unknown known of like, what is this going to be like? It's a game that's so near and dear to them, but now they're playing with strangers. I'll go in with a directive, like a scavenger hunt, where I kind of set the game up ahead of time. And then it gives them the opportunity of, can the group, if they want to, they can work together, they can work independently, they can ask me for help, or, I can just observe. And then after that, what I found is the groups kind of go into those same stages of, there might be individual or independent play, then there might be parallel play together, there might be collaborative play, and then seeing how the group forms through this shared experience. And it's just amazing. And I'll always ask group, oh, go ahead.
It's such good social skills, like work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always ask them to check in and check out. And what can be so powerful is hearing like check-ins that might be 0 out of 10, 0 being the lowest, 10 being the greatest day ever. Members that might check in at a 3 or 4 or 5, and then checking out at 10, 10, 10, or higher, I think really validates that this isn't just playing a game, that there's so much more benefit and therapeutic work that's happening, even if it's just a scavenger hunt.
Oh, so good. Brian, I wish we could just like talk like for another hour on this. Just keep going and give examples and just keep. I'm just so excited about this. But we have to find a place to to wrap up our
Yes.
conversation. Before I share with our listeners, or have you share with our listeners where they can get your book, get the book, and other things, where they can access you. What is there? What are we? Is there a piece where you're like, we cannot get off, Lisa, until I say this piece?
Yes. Thank you for asking that, because I did want to share two brief moments of like mistakes that I made, that one in group, one in individual, that I just think can be helpful and like speak to. Yeah. So a mistake I made in individual is when I did get really drawn into the game. And like it was later in the treatment, which I think typically happens, where then it is just, it's a lot more of a kind of almost casual, so to speak, play. I went way over time. I lost the time boundary. We totally went over, and I don't have parents check in at the end, so there wasn't that. And what I remind myself is like, oh, this isn't just playing video games. There's the clinical component. So even though a part of me wanted to just be like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta log off.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, bringing awareness to my experience of like, oh my gosh, I was so lost. I didn't even realize what time it was. This went by so fast, and kind of having that intentional ending, and then, closing that up. And then in the next session, circling back to that of like, wow, things were so fast last time.
Beautiful.
And then in group, man, in the scavenger hunt I did one time, I told them like, hey, you can ask for clues, you can ask for help. And there were 6 items that were hid. They found all 5. They were like, okay, well, we give up. Where's the 6th? And I was like, I totally forgot. I totally forgot. And I was like, I don't know. I don't remember. And it was great though, because the way I started conceptualizing it was if there was frustration in the group or irritation or whatever it is, I wanted to just bring it all on me where they could have that experience of like, oh no, and
Brian!
yes, how could you? We're
How
never
could
gonna
you
find
do
it.
this? Well, and then, yeah,
Um,
then we get to work with disappointment or
yes,
expectations
yes,
not met, and yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
yes,
Sounds like your mistakes had some treasures in
yes. Hope so.
them. Okay, so Brian, tell our listeners, where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
Yes, welcome to check out my website at deeplisteningpsychotherapy.com. Welcome to find me on LinkedIn as Brian Keating, Brian with an I. And yeah, they're welcome to just, and anyone, please reach out. I was a contributing author to the book Advances in Online Therapy, Emergence of a New Paradigm. And so that speaks about all different modalities for anyone who's working online. It's a really wonderful, amazing book that was published in 2023. And my chapter is on online play therapy. And specifically, it's kind of like a clinical prose example of working with the offering and the setup and yeah, how I worked with that during COVID.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Brian, thank you so much. Um,
Thank you.
love I love that this is what we got to talk about, and I hope that listeners feel inspired, excited. If nothing else, that line in the sand maybe is a bit more removed, and more curiosity that maybe games really do have a place in the room or online, and that we really can enter kids' worlds wherever those worlds
Yes.
exist, and meet them where they're at. So
Yes.
thank you, Brian. All right,
Oh, thank you.
listeners. Yeah, you're welcome. Listeners, wherever you are in the world, whatever you are up to these days, whatever life is bringing you, my wish for you is that you're tending to yourself, you're tuning in to your bodies, you're trusting what you
Mm,
need, you're aware of your heart. You are the most important toy in the playroom, and I wish you lots of hugs. That's what I wish. We all need
mm.
lots of hugs these days. Until next time.